Hi, this is Paul Perdue, and this is the first meeting of the virtual user group for 2009. Welcome to 2009, everyone. Today we are going to talk about reconciling a bank account and all the things that can go right and all the things that can go wrong when you do that. And Mary Jo will be covering that topic, and she'll go first. And then when she's done, I am going to talk about making mass changes to your data using one of two routines, changing WIP transactions or transferring transactions between clients. Mary Jo, are you on the call?
Yes, I am.
Well, why don't you go ahead and start with reconciliation.
Okay. What I'm going to talk about today is how to perform an initial reconciliation. If you've never reconciled with General Ledger before, I'm going to show you a couple of things on how to get that started. Are there several people here that are already using the reconciliation program, or several of you who are not? What's the?
I do.
I do. Yes. So most of you are already using the reconciliation program? Yes. Okay.
Is there anybody who is not?
I do not.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to do then, I'm going to come in to the reconciliation program. To do an initial reconciliation, there's several different reasons why you might need to do an initial reconciliation. You may have just purchased the software. You may have had the software for some time, but you just have never used the program. Or you've converted from an older version that didn't allow you to reconcile anything but checks. So in this scenario, we're just going to say that we had just purchased this, or I'm going to do two actually, that we had had it for some years and just have never used it before. So you first of all need to determine which bank statement you are going to reconcile. Are you going to go back to the last year? Are you going to start? I thought this is a good time to do this because it's January. If you've never done it, this is a good month to start. So you get that statement that you want to reconcile. Get that in front of you, and you have that beginning balance ready. And you come into reconciliation. You choose your account that you're going to reconcile, and there is a drop-down. If you have several accounts here, you can do all of them. Now, this actually has the trust account on here, which you would probably not have that in General Ledger. I don't know why. That's the sample data we're using. So we'll ignore that part. We should not have that. But for the first reconciliation, you're going to go ahead and make sure that you've done a couple of things before you come in here as well. You're going to want to make sure that if you're using the accounts payable system that you've posted any checks through the statement date that you're going to be using. Whatever that cutoff date is, if it's 10/30, 10/31, you're going to want to make sure that you've posted all those AP checks prior to that. If you're integrating with Tabs3, you're going to want to make sure that all of your payment and cost transactions have been posted to the General Ledger bank account. And if some of you are already using this, I'm going to cancel this for just a second. You should also have made your deposit slips for this. And to do a deposit slip, you're going to want to choose a date of whatever the fees that came in that you put in. Choose your bank account, select your recipient, and group your payments that came in for that time period. This will make it easier for your reconciliation later on. Instead of having 20 different fee entries that you've got to try to go back and say, okay, my total deposit was this amount and what made that up. You can group those right here beforehand. And once you've made that deposit slip, that's how it will show up in the reconciliation program. So I'm going to get out of that. The other thing that you want to do is if you're using the trust accounting system and you are posting payments to firm, you're also going to want to make sure that those have posted to the bank account as payments from the client and are over there. And once that is done, then you can come in here. You can go ahead and put the statement date in. We're going to go ahead and use a beginning balance of 0 for our first reconciliation if this is your very first one that you're doing. Otherwise, you would go ahead and put in the most current statement balance if you've been doing this for a while. In our scenario here, it is 119,141.93, and our ending balance, which is 170,199.55. And then over here, you can choose your order. There's several different ways that you can do that. You can do all withdrawals, all deposits. You can do checks, receipts, other withdrawals, other deposits. It's all ways that you can just see this broken down in a different way. So we're going to go ahead and just use checks, other withdrawals, and all deposits. And then we're going to say OK. And one of two things can happen here. Either you're going to come right into the reconciliation window like I just did, or a box is going to pop up and you're going to receive a message that says your calculated balance and your statement balance do not match. If it does not match, how many of you have had that happen before?
I have, yes.
And then you're not sure exactly what to do with that because it's saying, you know, my statement balance is off.
Go on through it.
Yeah, you just keep going, huh?
Right.
Well, there is a way, and you do want to correct that. You always want your statement and your calculated balance to match. In my scenario, what I would do, let me get out of this, and I'm going to cancel it. Now, understand, this is another little tidbit here I wanted to give you. If I just came in here, I haven't checked anything off. I haven't done anything with this reconciliation. And if I come over here and I just want to close it, technically, General Ledger still thinks that this reconciliation is open and you've started one because you've put information on that first screen and it thinks this is open. Sometimes you'll have a message pop up when you're in, trying to do something else, and it'll say you cannot do this because a reconciliation needs to be finalized or canceled.
When you're trying to figure out the month, at the end of the month, it does.
Correct. And so what you want to do, and you're thinking, I don't have one open, I haven't done anything, but you might have come in and just looked at something like, oh, I'm not going to do this right now, and closed it. To cancel a reconciliation, when you come back in, you'd have to come back into this reconciliation, and you need to come up to this red X up here, the cancel button, to get back out. Are you sure you want to cancel this reconciliation? Yes. It's going to wipe out everything that you've just done, but then, or if there's nothing done, it'll just get out of it. Or if you are ready to finalize that statement and you just didn't hit finalize, you can go ahead and finish it up and finalize it and then do whatever activities that you were trying to do before. Okay? So I'm going to come back in here, and I am going to put the beginning balance as 0, and then I'm going to make my ending balance what it's supposed to be. And I'm going to say OK, and then I am going to get that box there. And this is what, you do not want this. And technically, this one, since I put a 0 balance, I've got a calculated beginning balance of, my beginning balance, what it should have been. But you'll have whatever that difference is. You're going to want to record that. Write that number down. Take the calculated and the statement balance and find the difference. Okay? And then when you say OK, you're going to come in here. And when you get to settings, you're going to come into settings, and we're going to change that beginning balance to the difference that we had. So in this case,
Stephanie Crawford, please down 101.
In this case, we're going to put in the beginning balance as what it should be, and I'm going to say OK, and then I can reconcile as I needed to, and whatever those differences are, that should reconcile out, and you should be OK. If you're still getting that calculated and beginning balance that's different and they do not match after you're all done, what we need to do is take a look and find out why. Is an entry, did it get put in error? Did you have, like every 3 years, you have your unreconciled balances fall off, and then this is going to throw your balances off here. So you may have to make some adjusting entries here to get that back in line with what it should be.
Gotcha.
Okay? And it's pretty easy to usually figure out what it is. A lot of times that number will stand right out in your head. You go, oh, yeah, that was that check that bounced, and we forgot to make the adjustment, and so on. So we can do that. So in this case, now we're ready to reconcile. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to check off 2 checks, and we're going to check off the deposit. And of course, your reconciliation is going to have many more checked off than I do, and then I'm in 0 balance here. So the difference is 0, and I'm in balance. Everything's okay. But in your case, if you're going to have, you could have hundreds of checks or just a few, and same thing with your deposit. And I'm going to show you another little shortcut. If you have several checks that you need to reconcile all at once, you can go ahead and click on one and drag your mouse down to a group of checks that need to be reconciled. And then if you hit the space bar, it'll reconcile all of them for you.
Excellent. I didn't know that.
And that way, if you want to look at them and you go down and say, yes, I know that these 20 checks have been ordered, instead of clicking each one, you can go ahead and do that.
I'll bet you can, those consecutive checks you can see really easily from the bank statement, and that would work.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then I can unreconcile them just as easily. I can group them, and I can hit the space bar, and again, it will uncheck them all that way. Okay? So now that I'm in balance and everything's okay, I can come down here and I can finalize. And a lot of times it's that, people don't understand that this asks you this question one time. And if you don't print this reconciliation report that one time, it's lost. So what I want to show you is, I'm going to say yes, I want to print it. And let's say that you want to go ahead and you want to print this, but then what if later on you needed to check it later? what I recommend is printing this to a file. And that way you can go ahead and say okay, and you can save it as a PDF file on your desktop or in a folder for reconciliation report. And if I just called this reconciliation, I think we're in October of 2009 in this data, we can do that. And then I can change this to a PDF file, choose whatever folder I want to store this in, whether it's on my desktop or wherever, and I can save that and I can get to it at any other time. Okay? And you can access that on your desktop or folder whenever. Okay? And I'm not going to save that one because I don't need to have this one. But we can take a look at this, and we can go ahead and say okay. And if you want to preview it first and see what you have, now again, this is all sample data that came with our program, so it's not going to make much sense or anything like that. But this is what it'll look like. You should have your difference be 0. It will show you all of your outstanding checks, all your outstanding withdrawals and deposits, and then what your actual balance should be as of the date that you're doing them.
Right.
Okay? And that way you can still print your general ledger report, and on that date, this is what your balance should be. Okay? In this case, I'm going to go ahead. I'm not going to print this, but you're going to want to do that or save it to a file. And once that is done, it's going to say, are you sure you want to finalize? I can say yes. Reconciliation is complete. Those items drop off my list. The next time I come in, I will have that balance. I can tell it what my ending balance is, and I can start all over again. Okay? Now, I should not receive that error again. If you do, like I said, you can call Paul or I, and we can take care of that for you and help you find what that is and get that back in alignment.
Mine has been off for a long time, and
Okay.
I can't remember. It seems like it's well, it doesn't matter, but in any case, I'll see if I can't get that straightened out.
Okay.
We do a lot of those at year end because people get to the end of the year and they say, I'm going to stop seeing that message.
And usually it's a very quick fix. I mean, under 15 minutes, and we can have that out of there for you, and it's done. So we'd be glad to help you with that later.
Okay.
Any other questions or anything on reconciling in general ledger?
Joe, I was having trouble logging onto the visual. On the very first point you made about lumping deposits so that you're reconciling them as a group rather than, does that require using the deposit slip preparation?
Yes.
So if you're not using that feature, you can't lump them?
No. If you want to see your deposit, when you go to the bank and you make a deposit, your deposit is, let's say it's $1,000. And in that $1,000, it could consist of 10 clients who paid you $100 each.
Right.
And if you do not use the deposit slip feature and group those, what happens is when you get to the reconciliation, you're going to see 10 payments in there for $100 each, and you're going to have to remember, but you're going to also see everybody else's payments on other days, and they're all going to be in there, and you're going to try, your statement doesn't say 10 $100 entries. It says you deposited $1,000 on January, whatever.
Well, in addition, each of those $100 payments can represent 10 different cases.
Correct.
Correct.
So I
and that's
recommend
really all that deposit slips does is lump them together.
This
But
is
in
not
order
a
for that to
deposit
happen,
slip that you take to the bank or do anything with except group these in for your reconciliation purposes. And then you also have the option to print that and put it with your bank's receipt, whatever you took in. A lot of times I recommend when you make your payments, group them together. They're there in front of you. This is today's deposit. You could have 20 payments. You could have 5. It depends how often you go to the bank and how often you make your deposits. But let's say this is today's deposit. I'm going to go to the bank. I've got 10 cases with $100 each. And I go ahead into Tabs. I enter my 10 payments. I print my verification list. And at that point, it should tell me that I had 10 clients, $100 each, total $1,000 that went in the bank. I print that off, and then I delete that verification list.
Right.
That way, it's clean the next time I come in. It's only going to show me today's payments that went in. Then I go over and I make my deposit slip. And then all I'm doing, those clients, they've already been put
Print
on
off
the
the
tab.
verification list from the general ledger, too, don't you?
I do what?
Yeah.
Print off the verification list from the general ledger.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then in my deposit slip here, I go ahead and I would make this deposit. And I could select these recipients, and I can say in 1117, here I've got 2. I've got 2 payments here. I can say, okay. It puts them in to a deposit slip. Now my total is $1,950. and then I can go ahead and I can save that. When it'll take that information and put it, when I go to reconcile, it'll have a line that will say deposit number 14 for $1,950. Then I can always click on that and see who made that up and how many clients were in there. Or I can come in here and I can see this. But once this is done and it's saved, then I can print it, and that goes with that verification list as well. So that way I know I've made my deposit slip. I know I've applied my payments into Tabs. Then I go to the bank and I deposit my money and I get that receipt. And so I have all those things, and then I group those together and staple them, and that's my day's work. That's what I did today for the bank. I've got 3 different places and 3 different things that I've done, and you can verify that. Then I always put it in a file, and then whenever, anybody could come in any time and say, what was our deposits, what happened on the 13th of January, and I could go pull that out, and everything was right there.
Right.
So it's just a way that you can, have everything together when you're doing this. You group these deposits. Now, if I came into reconcile here, and I'm just going to put the same amount because I'm not going to check anything off. And if I go ahead and I say OK, I can show you when I come down to my deposit. I think I made one earlier too. Here's a couple that's already been in there. But here's that deposit for $1,950. And if I go ahead and I click on it, I can double click and I can see that those were my payments that I had for that day. And that's what consisted of that $1,950.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm curious, Bill. Why don't you use the deposit slips?
I just never got around to it. I mean, it wasn't part of the routine. So.
I know a lot of our clients say, "Well, my bank doesn't take the deposit slip at print, so I'm not going to do that." But that's not really what it's there for. It's there so that you can lump these together.
Okay.
The term deposit slip's a little bit misleading, I think. It
It is.
And it has nothing to do with the deposit slip as far as the bank's concerned.
There are some banks that will actually take them as a deposit slip. Mine doesn't.
Because I'm using a remote deposit now that I don't have to go to the bank anymore.
Where you scan the checks. How do you like that?
And I don't have to, make a deposit slip for the bank. I just pull it off of the computer, right? But I just run it through the little machine, and I don't even have to get out of my chair. It makes it really, really simple.
I think I'd like that.
Check with your bank. Remote deposits.
Oh, you need to get out of your chair a little more.
Yeah.
Any other questions on reconciliation?
No, that was very helpful.
Okay. Any questions that you have outside this, or if you run into certain scenarios that we haven't covered today, just give us a call, and we'd be glad to go one-on-one and help you out with that.
Okay, and I probably should do that because I've got a couple of items that have been in the reconciliation. One of them goes back to 2007.
Okay.
Well, now you're going to run into and that's going to disappear at some point.
Well, I wish it would. I wish it would, but it won't. It keeps hanging in there.
Okay.
Well, after 3 years, GL drops its detail. So when you close next year or this year, that will go away, but I'd recommend getting it fixed before then because if fixing it has something to do with being able to see it, then when it drops off, it'll make it even more difficult.
Right, but the thing about it is it's what I would like to do is be able to quote JE unquote it, unquote do it, and I know I can't do it with this system, but I need to get them out of there. There are things that have been horsed around some other way, and they shouldn't be there in the first place. The bank balance is okay. This has nothing. These items have nothing to do with them, but there's a couple of.
These are floaters. You never reconcile them, so
that's about right. That's about right. That I have to leave them sitting there because I can't get rid of them, but I don't need to check them off because that has nothing. And if I do check them off, that's going to horse up the bank account, the bank balance.
Right.
Okay. Well, we can take a look at that.
I have the same issue where I went in and did a payment adjustment where I divided a payment amongst 2 different file IDs, same client, but it reappeared like I was remaking the payment.
You probably checked the box where it asked you, do you want to go ahead and make GLS entries for this? And you might have said yes, go ahead and make those adjusting entries.
Okay.
And then that probably put entries over there for you.
But unfortunately, in this instance, you didn't need them.
Right,
They're
right.
there.
Right, because
Right.
the deposit was already made, the bank account matches,
Mhm.
and everything reconciles, but now that's sitting there, and I'm afraid that if I check it, it'll post it to the account again.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. That may be a case where we just need to, zero that one out because you didn't need it in the first place. It's an additional journal entry that wasn't needed.
Okay.
And then once it's zeroed out, you can
Then you
simply
can reconcile to
it
zero.
because it won't affect anything.
So I could actually go in and change the amount to 0 and then check it?
Or hit the delete key, the trash can while that journal entry is up, and that will also change it to 0.
Okay.
Problem
Do it
is,
to both sides.
yeah, you need to do it to both sides.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, you probably already got that in there once, and you don't need it again.
Right.
So I
And
would,
then once you do that, it'll still show up in your reconciliation, but it'll have a balance of an amount of 0.
0.
So when you check it off, it'll have no effect on the totals.
Okay.
Ah, okay. Okay, that might help me. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Okay,
if
is
there's
it my
no other
turn, Mary
questions-
Jo?
Yep, I'm going to turn this over to you, Paul.
Okay, I'm so excited. Let's see, I'm going to talk about what to do when attorneys do things wrong. And I don't want to pick on them because they're not always the ones, but a lot of times you have stuff that goes in wrong for a number of reasons. Maybe you have an attorney that put in all of his time so far this month on the wrong case for the Jones client, or he put it in at the wrong rate, or you have an attorney that was there on a Saturday. We're going to pick on attorneys because I don't think there are any here. You have an attorney that was there on a Saturday. He set up a case all by himself, and when he set that client up, he got the rate wrong, and then he went ahead and added time for 2 weeks, and now you've discovered that his time went in at $100 an hour when it should have been in at $200 an hour. There are 2 things that can be used. If you come into Tabs and are on this main tab, and then go to the Transactions tab, there are 2 routines that can be used to do a lot of neat things that sometimes people don't know are there. Let's start with the attorney that sets up a client all by himself, gets the rate wrong, enters time with the wrong rate. Naturally, 2 weeks later when you print draft bills, you discover this, and you go in and fix the rate in the client, but that doesn't change all the entries that he's made for the last 2 weeks. There is a routine called Changing WIP Transactions that allows you to change en masse from, let's say, one rate to another. And when you go in there, you get 3 tabs, and the first 2 tabs help you to decide who you're going to change. If you want to change a specific client, let's say Michael Larson, you would select Michael Larson, and if you only want to change, let's say instead of a certain client, you want to change all the entries for a certain primary timekeeper, or all the entries for a certain category of law. Unlikely that you'd be doing that, but it's there. Or all the entries that were made for a certain location. Okay? This is the same screen that you see when you're printing final bills, when you're printing reports. It just lets you select what you're doing it for. Then we have another screen that, again, is like printing final bills, like printing certain reports, that lets you select what you want to change for whoever you've selected over here. Do you want to just change the fees? If that's the case, uncheck expenses, advances, and payments. If you only want to change the fees for Robert Burns, select him as the fee timekeeper, and you'll only be changing for whatever client you selected. Let's choose Mega Construction, because they always have big bills. And timekeeper number 4, this means you'll only be changing, who was it? Robert Burns's entries for Mega Construction. You can even say he only screwed it up for 2 weeks, so we want to go with 11/1 through today, which the system thinks is 11/17/09. Then, once you've stipulated what you want to change on these 2 screens, what client, what timekeeper, what date, maybe a certain transaction code, maybe a certain category, maybe it's the payments you want to change, whatever, you come over here to these 2 screens and tell it what you want to do. Now, a very common one is that this timekeeper for this date range for this client had the wrong rate. So we come over here and we say we want to change the rate, We want to change, he had it in there for some reason as 100, and it's supposed to be 250. This would change all the entries for this date range, for this timekeeper, for this client that have a rate of $100 up to 250. It would recalculate the amount, and it would do it in mass. So if this was the only client that this attorney worked on for that 2-week period, and he's got literally hundreds of entries, this will change them all.
Do you have to specify the old rate, Paul?
I
In other
believe.
words, what if we made multiple mistakes but at different rates?
I believe you do not. Do you know how to tell when a computer salesman's lying? His lips are moving. So let's just try this and see what happens.
Are your lips moving?
See, it does not. No changes were made. Now, I have a feeling that could be for a number of reasons. I would have to digress and say that I think that you do not,
Okay.
but I'd want to check. And to do that, well, I'm not getting, yes, I am. Specific types, I'm going right into help, going into rate. Select the rate, when changing the rate, the amount filled on there. We were calculated. It doesn't say anything about leaving it blank. I'm kind of getting the impression from this that you do have to know what the old rate is.
Okay.
But typically what's happened is that an attorney has been defaulting to the wrong rate. They've just gone ahead and entered their time, and it's only one rate that is being changed from one thing to another.
Okay.
You're right. You have to put them in. If there are 2 or more rates that are wrong, you're going to have to put each of them in individually.
You have to do it twice. Okay, that answers that. Now, sales tax, not many people charge, nobody in our jurisdiction. I mean, we have some clients outside of Chicago, Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio, but nobody in those areas has to charge sales tax, so that's not an issue. It's unlikely that you run into a bad category, but if that same attorney that set up the case all by himself on Saturday forgot to specify a category, or he set up a criminal case as being a probate case, then all your fee entries that were entered until somebody came and fixed it in the client file, all those existing fee entries are going to have the wrong category. So same thing, you just say we want to change probate, which is what it was mistakenly set to criminal, and you'll be able to do that. Another common one is sometimes a case will mistakenly get set up as non-billable. So you want to change everything from non-billable printable, it might be the way it's set up, to our favorite billable printable, which means it's billable and it's going to show up on the bill. So these are the things that you can change en masse for WIP. I will tell you right now, came upon this in the clients the other day, you cannot change from one timekeeper to another, unfortunately. So if the need is to change from one timekeeper to another, the only way to do that is one by one.
Individually, okay.
Can be done pretty quickly. This firm had, I believe, 25 timekeepers, and we needed to change a specific date range. I think it was a week or two, and they put a team of 4 people on it and had it done in an hour or 2. I mean, that's not exactly the quickest thing in the world, but it's better than having to re-enter those transactions. Now, the other thing that can happen is that
I'm going to just say something. Paul is choosing no every time he does this for the backup, but
well, you
don't
chose
do
no
as
too.
he does. Do as we say. You need to say yes, because
Yeah.
if anything goes wrong, you're going to want to be able to restore from a backup that you just made. So continue, Paul.
These are routines that, if they're interrupted by power outages or network failure, they are devastating. Keep in mind the system is in the middle of reorganizing entire chunks of data, and if it's interrupted and the system doesn't know where to pick up, the only way to get out of it is to restore from backup. So Mary Jo's right. But with that, I'll click on no and come in
Well,
here.
we're using sample data that doesn't matter anyway.
Doesn't matter. That's right. Now, this is transfer transactions. Maybe an attorney thought he was working on the mega construction Site 104 case, and he's actually working on the Cleveland site case, and he's put his time on the wrong matter. Transfer transactions will let you select who you're going to pull it from and where you're going to send it to, and then it'll show you what it has. In other words, all it has that's outstanding is fee transactions. So you can say, I want to move the fee transactions from Michael Larson Larson versus Belcourt to Marcus Phillips real estate acquisition case, and I only want to do it for a certain timekeeper, 4 to 4, or maybe I only want to do it for a certain date range, or maybe it's only for a certain timekeeper for a certain date range, or if you don't, it's just a couple, maybe it's 10 different transactions, you can simply come down here and it will show you all the transactions for Larson versus Belcourt that are currently in WIP, and you can say, well, I want to do this one through this one, so 7 through 12, and so you can go ahead and say, well, I'm going to do 7 through 12, and it would do those, and then if you also want to do 1 through 4, you'd have to come back and do it a second time and move those. But this will allow you to take a group of transactions, move them from one client to another or from one matter to another, and do it relatively quickly. If you are moving payments, maybe you entered a payment and put it on the wrong client, you can do it right here. Here's the one payment. It needs to be moved from this client to this client. That's the way to do it. Now, of course, this is WIP. Transfer WIP transactions is what it doesn't say that here, but the icon back where we started says transfer transactions between clients. I guess it doesn't say WIP, but only WIP fees, payments, and costs can be moved. Now, the other thing to consider is never, ever check this box unless you're trying to move an entire client to another client or merge two clients together. Let's say 2 matters got set up as separate matters, or 1 matter got set up as 2 separate matters in the billing system. For some reason, bills got printed, time got entered for both matters. Now, after the fact you've discovered that, you can use this to transfer all the accounts receivable and ledger and client fund information from one matter to another. But most of the time, 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, you do not want to do that. Most of the time, you're just moving a payment from one matter to another or moving a group of fee transactions from one matter to another. So very careful about this and don't check this box unless you absolutely know that that's what you want to do. And that is about all I have to say about making mass changes. Does anybody have questions on that?
No.
Okay, very good. Well, that then concludes our first virtual user group meeting of 2009. Have a good rest of the day, everybody, and we'll see you next month.